So I'm really fascinated as to how you actually arrived at the transition to this much deeper, much more holistic form of transformational speaking.
Well, a life journey for sure, Sue.
Sure.
I had to speak as a younger woman, and all I had available to me was methods and techniques and the way it's supposed to be done.
Uh-huh.
And I discovered that the more I learned and the more training I took, the worse I got. And I realized over time, being in the world of speaking and observing speakers for so many years, that the really good speakers were original.
Yes.
They didn't follow all those rules. And people wanted me to help them with their speaking because I had been head of the Worldwide Speakers Association. And I had done strategic marketing for some speakers. But I realized there was this missing piece of how a speaker shows up fully their way so that they can make an impact.
Yes.
And that whole journey for me followed my own awakening to a greater spiritual experience, to my own personal growth. And because speaking is often so terrifying for people, I realized that that needed to be applied to move us through those blocks to standing in our truth and our magnificence in a way that we could be the originals that we are on a speaking platform instead of showing up like someone else. So, great question, long journey, but it was a delight to write the book and get it to the place where people would look within before they would start expressing outwardly.
Yes, and you also run workshops doing this as well, yes?
Yes. I do a 4-day intensive for just six people because I realize we don't know our best material.
No.
When we're accustomed to speaking, we get up with whatever's worked in the past, and it's not necessarily current or alive or exciting for us. And if it isn't, it's not very exciting for the audience.
No.
So it's about getting out of jet lag in our life and becoming current with who we are and speaking from there. So it's a lot of fun to watch people catch up. I love quoting Gertrude Stein, who said, if we already knew it, it would not be creation, but dictation. And I don't think we want dictation from an old mindset. It's not very compelling.
No.
So what's the creation? And how do we express that?
Well, there's that. And also you talk about keeping your stories alive, which I think is so, it's vital to be able to keep that communication alive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And you notice, I'm sure, that you can see a speaker this year, and next year you're going to hear the same story, and the next year. I did learn from running NSA that the conventional wisdom in speaking is it's a lot easier to get a new audience than a new speech.
Yes.
But there's a balance there.
Hmm.
Typically, what we have to say comes from some event in our life that has given us the credibility and the interest to put our story out there. And so people want to hear the story. They want to know how we learned what we're suggesting to them as a possible way of looking at the world.
Yes.
So it's not the story itself, it's how we tell it to keep it alive. So I don't believe in scripting.
No.
Because it sounds like a script.
Yeah.
But when we know the story, and I talk about a home zone in speaking, not a comfort zone.
Yeah.
I think a comfort zone sort of boring and deadly and predictable and most of all forgettable.
Sure.
So home zone, when it's alive and fresh for us, every time we speak, makes that story a little different each time, current for the moment. We're tapped into the energy. We're seeing what's being asked. And it doesn't get old for us, and therefore it doesn't get old to the audience.
No, no. But what I'm amazed at is obviously, you've had so much, if you like, conventional experience regarding speaking, and how you actually made that transition, because a lot of people would have just been comfortable with the wins they were getting.
Well, I guess my life has never been about what's comfortable. It's more about what's calling.
Wow.
And where I have come to with this is we all have something important to say.
Yeah.
And if we don't say it, it's not going to be heard.
No.
So if we work with tired techniques and old ways of putting it together that are very conventional, we're going to shut ourselves down and just not do it. That, to me, is what isn't acceptable.
No.
We need every voice because we each hold a piece of this big puzzle for the world we want to live in now. And if our voices don't come forward, we're never going to get that piece, and we're not going to get there.
No.
So how do we find our way to speak that people actually like?
Yes.
Because it's not predictable, and it required a new way from my perspective.
Yes.
I had the privilege of studying with the cultural anthropologist Angela Sarian, and she made the wisdom of indigenous cultures so current as how we apply it to contemporary life and our challenges of today. And it was life-changing for me.
Yes.
We tend to try to look forward with new solutions and forget what already exists in our roots.
Yes.
I recently heard a speaker say, we are all indigenous. We all go back to those nature-based cultures where there's a deep wisdom and capacity for living in the world that we tend to forget.
Yes.
And applying that to how we trust ourselves as speakers has been a remarkable journey. The concept of original medicine, for example, the concept that we all come to the earth with gifts and talents nowhere else duplicated. And then the second part of that indigenous teaching being, and if we don't express it, it's lost to the world for all time. That, to me, until it's more than a concept.
Yes.
When we name that and claim it for ourselves, then even when we don't want to speak, even when we're intimidated by the crowd or the invitation, we can stand in the power of that as a reminder that if we don't say it, they're not going to hear it any other way. And I found that gets the most timid of us up on the stage and willing to speak. And it's really it's something we touch into in every part of our lives. Rather than just knowing conceptually, hey, I've got something different, when we know what it is, then we're willing to stand in the power and strength of that.
Yes, so what you're actually saying is, when it's living through us, it's not so difficult, but we have to allow it to live through us.
We need to embody it. We need to claim it. Yeah. And it's not about some pretty words that sound good that you put on your business card.
No.
It's something deeply personal, kind of brief, but it speaks to our souls. Rumi said we each have a king inside who listens for what delights the soul. Yeah. So when we speak our medicine to ourselves and it resonates in our soul, there's true power in that.
Yes, yes. And several other things. You mentioned actually my favourite Rumi quote, out beyond all the quote I read was, "Out beyond all notions of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there." And I feel that's really very current for us today, because the field is also that field in physics, isn't it?
Yes, and it's an interesting thing when you look at it in speaking, because it's actually a place where there aren't any words.
No.
So I work with people on, okay, we can do information, which if someone doesn't agree with us, just sets up barriers to communication and acceptance.
Uh-huh.
Or we could work with, what people are doing, how they're thinking about it. But story, if you want to change the world, tell a better story, hits us at the soul level when it's told from the home zone. In original cultures, the soul would be connected with through ritual, song, story. And when a story touches our soul, it can cascade down and affect how we think and how we act. But it can do more. It can go to that collective level of spirit. And that's that area out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. That's the field where we can meet with no separation.
Yes, yes.
And it's not something you can plan when you're speaking.
No.
But you need to be awake to it and trust the energy of it. You're not going to do that if you're reading a script.
No.
But if you're connected with people and something is said that people are in that place of silence, our job as speakers is to be there with them. Because in that place of no separation, we can start imagining the new possibility, because we're all connected in it together. So one of the things I advise the people I work with is to be willing to be still for a long time, if that's what the energy is suggesting. That's not something they tend to teach. They teach pauses.
So even when you're speaking,
especially when you're speaking, because look at the collective energy of an audience. And when an audience moves into that space of stillness and awe and possibility, there's no words for that.
no.
If we move forward, that moment is lost. And that's really where we'd like to live, right?
Well, but how liberating, actually, so that I don't have to feel that I've got to fill with words all of this time, because I have a preference or know the importance of silence, because you don't always know what the next words are going to be.
No, it's good to give yourself enough space so that you'll actually stop a sentence and allow the next one to come in. And it's not that we don't prepare for our speaking, but instead of scripting, I suggest we storyboard with sticky notes. So we have our key concepts to give us structure, but then we can have the spontaneity in the moment for what wants to happen, or something unexpected to come through us, because we're tuned in to what might be needed in that moment.
Yes.
It takes a lot of self-trust, Sue. It takes a lot of experimenting, I think, with our way of being in front of an audience. But if we can start relaxing and having fun, recognizing these are people who want to play.
Yes, I can do it easily on a one-to-one basis, with a client. But I suppose, if I'm honest, and if this helps other people as well, the thought of an audience, and I suppose it's my imaginings. You say, don't you? It's how we perceive the world. And so, I need to make some shift in how I'm seeing an audience.
Well, I went through the same fear, which is why I had to find a different way of showing up.
Huh.
And what I see with people, first of all, we have to transform the fear. Fritz Perls said, fear is excitement without the breath. So we need our breathing practices. We need to be stable and standing in the strength of our presence rather than having our head just trying to figure it out.
Sure.
Because bodies hold, that's why Home Zone is so great on storytelling, because our bodies hold the memory of everything we've ever done. Our minds can't track all that.
No.
But if we allow our bodies to move a bit with what we're saying, we have access to something that may want to be expressed in the moment. So the other piece is, so fear is excitement without the breath. We need to breathe. And secondly, we need to understand that it's about the message.
Yes.
It's about the fact that if we don't bring that medicine and message forward, they're not going to hear it any other way.
No.
And it's bigger than our own ego attachment to looking good.
Right.
You know, the truth is sometimes it'll be great, sometimes it'll be mediocre, and sometimes we just have to lay an egg and step back and admire it.
and also, we don't even know that, do we? Because there might be one person in the audience that on that lay an egg day, it's relevant for.
Absolutely. And you know, the truth is an audience shows up looking like they've got it together, right? We don't know what it took for someone to put both feet on the floor that morning and get dressed.
Yeah.
And so we may be asked to speak about something, but the truth is people don't really know what they want. They just know they're hungry for something they don't have yet.
Yes, and in a way, I mean, you talk about and you use the Joseph Campbell's the hero's journey. In a funny way, the audience is coming along with their own hero's journey.
Absolutely. I mean, anything we choose to speak about, whether it's our fear of speaking, our experience of aging, any challenge in life is actually representative of other people's challenges.
Sure.
So the best story obviously will take our experience because that's what we've got that's original to us with all its details. But the beauty of it is it parallels the audience's experience where they start applying it to their own challenges. And that's why it's effective.
Yeah.
Information won't stick.
No. Story
sticks.
But it's not even just the story, is it? It's the authenticity, the vibrance, well, the vibration of that unique, lived maybe in a raw way, but it has been lived.
Yes, I mean, when you say raw, absolutely, because if we wait till we've figured it all out and we can look like this hero that didn't have to suffer too much or, you know, go through that deep experience of wondering, am I ever going to survive this? If an audience doesn't feel that, to them, you're just trying to look good.
Yes.
But
yes.
When the story touches their journey and they feel it is real and raw and trustworthy, then it becomes a real vehicle for transformation.
Yes.
Native American wisdom says, tell me a fact and I'll listen. Tell me a truth and I'll hear. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever.
Yeah.
And that's why story is so memorable and why it leads to people trusting that, whoa, if she did it, maybe I can too.
Yeah. You mentioned using our authentic power and that power which is different from force. I've read Hawkins' book too. And that's quite a new experience for many people as well, isn't it?
think it is, but it also speaks to why we should preach to the choir. You know, people always say, well, you're just preaching to the choir. They already know it. But reading David Hawkins' work, Power versus Force, was a huge wake-up call to me. Because I think what happens is we often say, well, I came from this business background, for example, and now I have a different understanding of new possibilities. So I will reach out and bridge to these people with this great message. Well, first of all, that's a little egotistical.
Sure.
We sort of move when we're ready. And it doesn't mean we can't be of value there. But the problem is typically we are bringing our energy down when we can't be in the fullness of what we have to bring.
Yes.
Figuring out, how can I edit this so they'll get it? And then our energy isn't fully present because we're tracking our words all the time.
Yes.
So what Hawkins does is he works on an energetic scale. And so actually the vibration of joy out of 1 to 1,000 is 540.
Yeah.
A really high vibration.
Yeah.
You get down to cynicism and the negative emotions, then if you're trying to reach them, you're going down. And one person holding this high vibration of joy can influence thousands because it's exponential.
Yeah.
So what I started seeing in my own business is I don't want to teach speaking to people who are trying to sell me a new car, for example. You know, using skills that could be used for transformation, for commercial uses.
Yes.
Isn't my highest joy. So what if I just started working with people who have a world-changing story that they want to be able to tell in a way that other people get on board with creating a better world? That turns me on.
Yes.
So I switched my business, and I think the book is very much an example of that, to people who really care about the future we're creating. So I work with a lot of coaches. I work with social change organizations, nonprofits. I work with entrepreneurs with a really good idea. I work with healthcare in the more integrative approach. Mm-hmm. And so my clients really excite me. And all of us in business often think we have to reach the whole world. And my sense is, no, we need to reach the people that we can connect with, move each other forward, and create that higher vibration that leads to the kind of change we care about.
Yes.
And it's so much more fun and so much easier.
Yes, and you can go to bed at night and sleep better, knowing that you've encouraged that vibration on a much larger scale. Because, as you say, it's far greater than that one interaction. It's a qualitative difference.
Yes, and if someone accepts what we say and they move forward with it and influence others, we are on the way without ever having to pull ourselves down into the level of argument, for example.
Touching a little on your practical framework, but you even bring your Transformational Speaking Part 1 into Part 2 as well, don't you?
Well, Part 1 is the heart, and Part 2 is the art of speaking. So the heart informs it all. Who are we? What do we love? What are we bringing forward? How are we home in the truth of who we are? Mm-hmm. And then, and home zone, being fully embodying that truth. And the good news is Part 2 around the skills is when it's like you said, Sue, about it's easy one-on-one. when we start feeling that skill level in front of it when we're home, which is the whole point, whether it's one person or an audience, then those skills pretty much naturally fall into place. So there's a few things we can learn, but then we're not worried about eye contact or gestures or the numerous things that are often taught in presentation skills classes that cause us to get into our heads one more time and not fully inhabit our bodies and our message.
Yeah.
So it all goes together.
Yes, and is there a particular reason why you choose the number 6 for the number of people that you have in a group?
Oh, I can keep up with 6 people.
Oh, right, okay.
And I can track what's going on with them.
Okay.
And also, it's exactly the right number, so on the final day, everyone gives a new talk.
Oh, right. Okay, but I also wondered if, if there was some sort of critical mass as far as the 6 was concerned. And also, if people have been able to experience within your workshop, the 4 days working with 6 people, then is it relatively easy for them to scale up to larger audiences from that 6, do you feel?
Well, it's certainly much better than one-on-one.
Sure.
First of all, I have my perspective, but the energy of one person is very different than having a small audience with structure. Plus, everyone learns from each other. If one person takes a risk and models something we're working with, then another person will say, oh, I see what that looks like.
Yes.
And it's easier to move. So I find a group of 6 moves really quickly together because they're there for their own reason, but they're in support of each other. I mean, everyone's in the same boat. They're trying to move into being more effective at home as in their speaking. So does it translate to a larger audience? It's sure a good step.
Yes.
And they come out of there with a speech. They don't develop it until the end of the 3rd day because they're developing their skills. They're looking at the stories that emerge, which often are stories they haven't even thought about that really hold the whole message. And so they're learning more about themselves. They're learning about themselves as speakers. And when they put that together on the 3rd day, I call it a rough draft in front of their new best friends.
Yeah.
Because that's a time to take a risk.
Yes.
Not pretend this has to be it. But if something kicks you out of bed the next morning and says, try this, this is the place to do it.
Yeah.
So it's great because it finds form. And it gets, and whatever is presented has feedback from everyone. So if it's ready for prime time, and it often is, great. Go out and give that talk right away, and where are you going to do it so it happens. And if it doesn't feel like it's ready, there's really good feedback on where it might have been confusing, where the speaker didn't fully feel at home, because we know the difference by then. We can tell whether someone's just sort of checked out trying to find the next words or whether they are present and not worrying about the next words. Makes a big difference.
Yes. And everyone has their own timing as well, don't they? Sort of, for some it might be going out and sort of booking that talk or what have you. But for someone else, it might be a month or 2 down the road, or...
Absolutely, but people tend to come when they're feeling a call either to get very clear about their message, which we do, or some event is coming up that they want to prepare for.
Yeah, there's nothing like something that's booked to help focus one, is there?
And another thing that happens that always is interesting is people will decide to come and then they'll get the booking. It's sort of like the universe is saying, hello, it's time.
Yes, there's something strange going on for me. I know there is, because this is just so unusual. And yet, I could recognize that such high quality just really needs to be shared as widely as possible. But also within your book, the fact that you even give those final resources, I mean, it really is a course in a book, really. Sincere thanks to Gail for sharing her transformational message via Transformational Speaking. You'll find the links below to Gail's book and also her workshops.